Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. If you want to keep up with all things Clown Decade, please do of course subscribe to the channel and become a channel member. Anyway, it may be Clown Decade, the news may feel like it's always getting worse, but Labour were in hopes this morning that this would only be good news, because in exclusive in the Financial Times, Starmer and Reeves have ditched plans to increase income tax rates in the budget. The Chancellor explores alternative ways to raise revenue to fill a fiscal hole estimated to be about 30 billion. And spoiler alert, the briefings from Number 10 have been absolutely shocking for weeks. Honestly, I thought Reform's comms were bad, but Labour make them look like professionals. Nobody said that the actual reason they were able to ditch the income tax rates, or the direct rate increase anyway, is because actually the OBR had given them good economic news, at least better news than they had before. But we'll get into that, but it is very important to point out that when this briefing came out, everyone was questioning, how are you going to fill up that gap then? And it turns out, actually, according to the OBR, they don't need to fill up the gap quite as much as we thought. So Starmer and Reeves have ditched their manifesto-busting plan to increase income tax rates in a dramatic U-turn ahead of the budget on November 26, according to officials briefed on the move. The PM and Chancellor have ripped up earlier proposals to raise the basic and higher income tax rates, officials said, and made fears the move would anger voters and further antagonise mutinous Labour MPs. And this is where Number 10 really have their issues, because on the one hand they have to deal with reality financial markets and effectively not bankrupt the country any further than we're already bankrupt, but at the same time they're dealing with mutinous Labour MPs who are basically ignoring reality and saying, oh, why do we need to raise the money to fund £5 billion in state spending further? I don't understand. It's only $5 billion. And to echo Ronald Reagan, it's only a few billion here, a few billion there. Unfortunately, that soon adds up to real money. The pound was down 0.3% against the dollar at $1.315 on Friday, and by the same margin against the euro, taking sterling to a more than 2-year low against the single currency. So the financial markets have not taken this very well. On top of that, gilt yields did spike this morning as well. To be absolutely fair, they are coming down again, and we don't know if they will be down to where they were before the spike this morning. We'll have to wait and see on that, I suppose. But this is a graph that looked, there's only one reason it doesn't look as bad as the one during Liz Truss's time, and that is because we are already in gilt yields above where we were at Liz Truss's spike. So, frankly, by every metric of Liz Truss crashed the economy, Reeves is crashing it harder, and yet you are not seeing people have a go at her quite as much as they were with Liz Truss. This is all because politics is effectively another high school playground, or college playground, or secondary school playground, whichever term you prefer. And if people don't like you, they will find any reason to try and take you down. That's what happened to Liz Truss, even though she made many mistakes, don't get me wrong. Rachel Reeves have made far more detrimental ones, and for much longer, and you are not seeing anywhere near the same amount of hatred that Liz Truss got. Anyway, the decision to change tack taken this week was communicated to the OBR on Wednesday in a submission of major measures set to be announced by Reeves in her budget. One person briefed on proposals said the original budget tax plan had been ripped up, while a second confirmed that the fiscal statement has been rewritten since the first set of measures by Reeves was sent to the UK fiscal watchdog earlier this month. Which, as I say, a lot of people speculated is because everybody had complaints about it. Well, you're always going to have people complaining because it is nothing but tax rises and shows a failure to make cuts where they need to be made. But there's no attempt to actually change that, and then at the same time, obviously, public sector seems to get massive pay increases despite no improving of productivity. So now there are alternative ways to fill the fiscal hole that economists believe is about 30 billion. Again, it's not actually quite that high according to the OBR, but frankly, who believes the OBR? But we'll get into that. One option to raise revenue would involve cutting the thresholds at which people pay different tax rates of income tax while leaving the headline basic and higher rate of the tax unchanged. That, by the way, is just a sleight of hand. That is a way to raise income tax. Because if you cut, say, the basic personal allowance threshold from 12,500 to 10,000, that means you start paying income tax on 10,000, or every pound you make above 10,000, rather than 12,500, adding whatever the percentage is to that extra 2,500, and they'll probably make a few hundred per person out of that. The problem is that we're at a point where minimum wage and 35, it might be 40, I can't remember, but full-time work anyway, means that you are now paying income tax. The lowest paid workers in the country pay income tax. We're already there. You may as well just get rid of the threshold as a whole at that point. And on top of that, they'll obviously cut the higher rates of tax down as well, coming after people on £46,000, which isn't even that high a salary. It's above median wage, don't get me wrong, but realistically, that should be the median wage. The median wage is about 10,000 or more below it. But either way, this is still breaking the Manifesto pledge. You are raising income tax. You might not be doing it directly, you might be doing it in a sleight of hand way, but at the end of the day, working people, however you define them, are going to be paying even more tax, which is the spirit of your manifesto. Reeves was pictured leaving Downing Street earlier this morning with her diary on display with a single word written in relation to a meeting: thresholds. Oh no. Reeves has already been expected to extend the freeze on personal tax thresholds that was introduced by the Tories. Prolonging this freeze by another 2 years would raise 8 billion to 10 billion per annum, depending on details in the OBR's forecast that was set out at the budget. Yeah, the freeze is ridiculous as well. This is part of the reason I'm backing reform, because they have ambitions to actually raise the thresholds so that you actually end up paying less tax, and the thresholds are more in line with where they were in the 90s and noughties, rather than having them basically freezed forever. Having said that, cutting the thresholds would raise billions of pounds more in additional revenue. People briefed on the revised plan said Reeves would also rely heavily on what has been dubbed the smorgasbord approach of increasing a range of narrowly drawn taxes. Oh no. They cautioned part of this package could still change, but a new gambling levy and higher tax on expensive property are expected to be included. The biggest problem we have at the moment in the United Kingdom is that we have like 4 separate offices for tax. It's so complicated, you need 4 offices for it. It's not streamlined at all, there's loads of reasons, you can have exceptions, blah blah blah. And this is yet another case of, oh, just add it to the, well, as they say, smorgasbord of taxes, and it just makes living in Britain even worse. It's another reason to hire an accountant, a lawyer, whole departments to see if you can get away with not paying as much tax. The Treasury has been approached for comment. Peel Hunt's chief economist, Callum Pickering, said that using a patchwork of smaller tax increases would be a bad outcome, calling such measures anti-growth. It would add to uncertainty, further damage the government's already tarnished credibility, and complicate any Bank of England judgment to potentially offset tax rises with rate cuts. This is another reason that gilt yields spiked. This is another reason that the pound weakened. Again, it looked like good news at the start, but it actually turns out to be worse. Only this Labour government can manage that. There was insistence from Downing Street that the budget had not been rewritten in response to the leadership crisis that had engulfed Starmer for the last few days, and after the Prime Minister's allies briefed that he could soon face a coup attempt. Some Labour MPs believe Starmer's days in Downing Street are numbered. It's definitely a case of when, not if, and also, if Downing Street are making sure that it got into the papers that this is not about the leadership contest, it's almost certainly about the leadership contest. The original tax plan pursued by Starmer and Reeves, based on an idea from the Resolution Foundation, carried heavy political risks for the embattled Premier and his Chancellor. Resolution Foundation, left-wing think tank, comes up generally with not great ideas. It would have involved income tax rates rising 2p on the pound, albeit with an offsetting 2p cut in national insurance rate. I say that's not actually a bad idea. The point of that is, say, pension income and income elsewhere where you don't have to pay national insurance. You actually reap in tax from that, while obviously cutting the people who pay, or not making a difference, to the people who pay both. It's not the worst thing in the world, and everyone basically wants to equalise income tax anyway and get rid of national insurance, because it's not ring-fenced for the NHS or pensions anyway. The 2 up, 2 down policy will have broken one of Labour's key manifesto promises, even if it would have left working people seeing no impact on their monthly pay slips. That's true, by the way. Having said that, cutting thresholds is actually worse for working people than this particular policy idea. Others would have been hit hard by the I mean, it was stupid to promise that from Labour anyway in the first place, but, well, that's a different issue. Others would have been hit hard by the policy. It would have raised $6 billion from the income of non-workers, such as landlords and pensioners. That was it, landlords. I forgot about landlords. Who pay the income tax but not national insurance, according to calculations by the Resolution Foundation. And honestly, I think it should be equalised for workers, landlords and pensioners. A lot of people think that, because I don't see the reason that pensioners and landlords should be able to pay less income tax than people who work. In fact, I'd argue it doesn't make any sense for workers to be taxed more than landlords and pensioners, but there we go. That's about the most left-wing I'm going to get on landlords. But anyway, to the point of the briefing that should have been part of this Financial Times article, but wasn't because the comms from number 10 are terrible. Exclusive from Alex Wickham, the political editor at Bloomberg, Rachel Reeves received an improved fiscal forecast from her budget watchdog, putting the fiscal hole at 20 billion, leading her to drop plans to raise income tax rates, people familiar with the matter said. Why wasn't this part of the Financial Times article? Because they're really bad at comms, and this probably will have not necessarily stopped the market fluctuations, but it certainly will have softened the blow. The latest update from the OBR, which, by the way, it would have only softened the blow because nobody really believes the OBR, moved in a significantly better direction due to the strength of receipts and stronger wage performance. I'd love to know who's getting stronger wage performance, because if that's public sector only, that's not actually stronger wage performance, that's more money that they have to get from the public purse. Either way, as well as filling the 20 billion gap, Reeves is still expected to deliver headroom against her fiscal rules of between 15 and 20 billion. An expected productivity downgrade from the OBR has been partially countered, the People said. I highly doubt that, to be quite honest with you. Growth for the last quarter was 0.1% of GDP. That's horrible, and that's part of the reason that taxes have to be raised so much, but we're in a doom loop of worse productivity. Oh god, put the taxes up. Oh, that makes productivity even worse. Put the taxes up. You don't tax your way into prosperity, is the old adage, but Labour will continue to do that anyway because their MPs are total ideologues who think that productivity is just standard. It's not. It took a lot of work to make the first world. And the early 21st century seems to be a very, very big speed run in ruining that. It's not just Britain, by the way, it's all of Europe. Reeves' strategy for budgets has not changed, and major tax rises are still expected to fill the remaining hole in public finances, they added. Reeves will likely lower income tax thresholds at the budget and raise significant taxes from salary sacrifice schemes, they said. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. You're going to get taxed for salary sacrifice, so trying to save for your future, yeah, that's being taxed. I think it was already taxed, to be fair, but the threshold for that is certainly coming down. Doesn't matter what you do with your money. It's got to go to the government. Has to, because they've tried nothing and they're all out of ideas. The Chancellor was prepared to break Labour's election promise not to raise income tax rates if necessary to fill the hole, but a better fiscal forecast now meant it was not necessary, the People said. Well, I'm largely with Farage. This budget, it's going to be bad. This is still all bad news, by the way. It's just better than we expected. But you're not going to get any of your productivity growth that people are crying out for. You're not going to improve the economy in any meaningful way. You might be able to fill up your holes, but people are still going to try and move away. I know so many people that say if Reform don't win in 2029 or whenever the next election is, they're planning to move. And guess what? I'm one of these people now. Why would I stay here? What's here for me is my family, sure. I do love them very much. However, I'm not going to be sacrificing my ability to make more money off the talents, skills and work that I do for the sake of staying in the country I was born in. It'll always have a place in my heart, don't get me wrong, but if it's just got to a point where everything signaling to me is go away, I'm going to follow the people that don't love the country as much. I have plenty of friends that have already done that, and I'm very envious of their lives, frankly. But I'm playing the long game here, so let's hope Reform win. Anyway, I'll finish this video off by going through Peston's take on all this. It's a mess, basically. The UK's creditors have reacted super negatively to the FT's correct report that the Chancellor has changed her mind and will no longer put up the basic rate of income tax by 2p by every penny. The pound's fallen and the price of the UK government debt gilt has dropped. So the implicit interest rate paid by the government has risen quite sharply by almost 9 basis points for 30-year debt and almost 7 for 10-year bonds. Again, these are the types of indicators where everyone said Liz Truss had crashed the economy. Markets do not like chancellors who engage in U-turns and are unpredictable, even when the U-turns are conducted in private and are then leaked. Why are there so much leaking from number 10 is also what I want to know. This is what brought down Boris Johnson. I mean, a lot of people have been saying this within the Westminster bubble. This feels very much like the end of the Boris Johnson era. We're coming to the end of the Starmer one, and it's only just been a year. What on earth is going on? My sources insist that Reeves is not going to take greater risks with the public finances, which is what investors quite understandably fear is happening. I'm being assured that whatever the eventual mix of tax rises in the budget, the Chancellor will increase headroom, the cushion against future fiscal shocks from the current paltry 9 billion to 15 billion or more. That will happen, a source said. What's more, I expect the Chancellor or PM to both make it clear later today that they will not weaken their commitment to the fiscal rules and increase headroom, because if they don't provide that reassurance, they could well find themselves in trust-style market meltdown territory. They've been in that for months at this point. Excuse me? This is what I was saying before. It's despite the fact that Labour are clearly in a ditch, they're still putting the kid gloves on to criticise this Labour government. When Liz Truss was in there for a week and they were all kicking her while she was down. It's incredible. So how has this all happened? I'm told that earlier this week the Treasury received improved data on current and expected future wage growth, and that this has therefore increased forecasts of future tax revenues. Effectively what's happened here is the OBR has some graduate interns who it almost feels like are playing about with numbers on a spreadsheet, and obviously that cascades down to, oh, this impact is actually slightly better than we thought it was going to be. But as is common knowledge for everyone for ages and is common wisdom, the OBR is basically always wrong, constantly has to revise figures, and it's revised again. And don't be shocked if in a couple of weeks they say, actually it is worse and you do actually have to raise taxes by 2%. This is why the markets are reacting badly, because they know the OBR are a complete waste of time to try and rely on any sort of fiscal forecast on. Pretty much every economist knows that predicting the future of any sort of economy is actually incredibly difficult, because at the end of the day, all you're trying to measure is future human behaviour. We suck at that with one person, let alone billion of them, well, 70 million of them in Britain. And of course, if you get the OBR saying actually this isn't very good, they're going to U-turn again. It's just complete uncertainty. This of course means that the projected margin by which the Chancellor will fail to meet her fiscal targets, the hole in the budget, has fallen, and presumably to less than was previously projected at 30 billion. It's now 20 billion as we know, which means the pressure on Reeves to raise income tax rates and therefore breach the party's manifesto is not what it was even last weekend. 1p on basic rates raised circa 8 billion, and a penny on all the rates raises about 10 billion in total. And again, that could just switch overnight depending which XL the OBR decide to put in front of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. To put this another way, with wages and personal income seemingly rising faster than she expected, again, no anecdote that I know reflects that, by the way. Fiscal drag from the frozen income tax thresholds was raised more than she expected. So here's the new Treasury tax master plan. Extend the freeze on income tax thresholds for another 2 years, and also look at reducing the threshold at which the 40 and 45p tax bands kick in, to put the increased burden on those with higher, though not very high, incomes. The 40p rate is 50,000 and above, by the way. 45p kicks in at about 125,000. That is a high wage, by the way. 50,000 is where you should expect to be if you're a middling manager. To be clear, Starmer and Reeves risk alienating huge numbers of Labour supporters who don't feel rich if they reduce and freeze thresholds in that way. But maybe that humiliation feels better for them than being in the first government to put up basic rates since 1975. Either way, there's still 11 days to the budget, which is plenty of time for them and several of the tax master plans to be put in the bin. Or taken out the bin as well, dust off the banana skin that's left on it, who knows. Anyway, from a normie perspective, this is all just more frustrating. What the hell is going on, Ari? When's the next U-turn? Oh, I'm just going to switch off from politics. This is all very good for my channel, though, because of all this switching. It means more people want to keep up to date and so watch my videos, so that's something for me. But I'd rather not have to do that, and I'd rather the country just be in a stable place where we don't have all these unexpected U-turns, and even the good news ends up looking bleak when you actually look into it. We've got this for at least another year, I guarantee that. As time goes on, I'm starting to think early election looks more and more likely, simply because they will have too many economic issues down the line, especially if there is actually a leadership contest and someone on the left from Labour gets in, which is more than likely, by the way. Anyway, that's all drama that I can get into when it happens over the next couple of years. For now, I will leave you on the note that at least this Friday there's a slight white pill in that at least your basic rate of tax isn't going up, but if you are a high earner quote unquote, if you're on over 50 grand, expect to pay more tax. For the people that don't feel like working, God bless them. Right, with that I think that's everything I had for you for today. So, Walls of Westminster podcast out later, no Tosh next week, it'll be back the week after. Wednesday there'll be a gaming stream, more Walls of Westminster next Friday, and Laughing at the Guardian next week too. Videos out as and when I can make them. Do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Also, do become a channel member and leave super chats and super thanks where you can too. Right, thank you all very much for watching, and as usual, until next time, goodbye.